Welcome to edition number 10 of the Three Amigos. The topic tonight, the 28-point plan that Donald Trump has laid on Ukraine and Zelensky. We're going to talk about what the financial elite haven't planned for us in the days and weeks and months ahead. They want to reduce the population to the golden billion. We're going to talk about how this is related. And then we're going to talk about what nobody wants to talk about. It's the elephant in the room. It's the danger of nuclear war that is more imminent now, more dangerous than at the time of the nuclear Cuban Missile Crisis. We are
Richard Dihlman,
Peter Frohwein,
and me, Regis Tremblay. Now, guys, before we get started, I have to give a shout out. We have a number one fan.
Oh, great.
She knows who she is, Valentina. And she told me last night her favorite show is the Three Amigos. Guys, we can't let her down.
All right. We have a fan.
All right. So the really big news, and it's big news, I think, around, well, I don't know about the United States, but certainly across Europe, because the Europeans are going crazy. Trump issued a 28-point plan to end the war and get peace in Ukraine. As we're going to discover tonight and talk about, there are a lot of problems with that plan. Number one, Ukraine was not involved. The Europeans were not involved. And the Russians were not involved. But it has been rumored that it was Russia that came up with the plan, which I think is outrageous, which we'll discuss tonight.
Yeah.
I want to begin first with you, Peter. What was your first reaction when you heard about this? I know you've analyzed it carefully. So what was your impression? Good, bad, indifferent?
Well, it's hard to know whether Trump is playing 5D chess or whether he's completely clueless. I'd say the chances that he's completely clueless are about 90%. And then the chances he's playing 5D chess are 10%. Now, when I say 5D chess, I've heard some thinking on this plan that I think I'm hopeful that this is that we're in the 10% of the 5D chess. Is Trump has presented a plan that the Russians will absolutely not go for. But that really, I think, is not if it's in the 10%, I think he presented a plan that Ukrainians wouldn't agree to. So theoretically, if they come back and say, hey, no, we're not going to agree to it, Trump can say, okay, I've tried. Now, Ukraine, you're on your own. And it'll give him an excuse to stop all aid, which would be the best of all worlds right now, given the current situation for the U.S. and even Russia. Now, Ukraine, if that happens, Ukraine would have to unconditionally surrender. But the points in this plan, there's so many points that are no-goes from Russian standpoint that I can see that it's just nonsense. I mean, first of all, there's a number of words in here that's clear that U.S. didn't just write this on their own. They had some help from the UK or MI6, because there's a number of proper UK English words in here. I'm looking at this going, Did you guys spell check this with a UK spell check, or, or was MI6 sitting in the same room and you guys decided to draft this nonsense? Now, there's one point that I saw that was pretty right away. There's a number of points, but I'll just point out one right now. Is it said they would limit the armed forces of Ukraine to 600,000, which is bizarre because in the draft agreement that Russia and Ukraine had in 2022, the peace agreement, Russia said they wouldn't go for anything greater than 85,000. So 600,000, I mean, this is so far out of this realm of reality that it's just nonsense.
Let's continue this discussion. I'm flipping the screen around here a little bit because it's not doing what I want it to do. Yeah, Russia, on the point that you just mentioned, one of its main goals has been the demilitarization of Ukraine. And as you mentioned, Peter, Russia seemed to agree between 60,000 and 80,000 max of Ukrainians. No mercenaries, no NATO, nobody else. So that the Ukrainian military would be severely reduced, and its purpose would be domestic protection, not an offensive force. So, good point. Now, Richard, you've read this thing, you've studied it. What are your thoughts?
I think it's just sheer speculation, and I'm not just saying that myself. That's what Maria Zakharova said the other day. That this is not really a document. You know, this guy Kirill, I forget the Russian guy's name, Kirill and Witkoff, they're not really even sanctioned to do this. This is just kind of on the side thing, you know. So I don't see this thing as being anything more than a sham. Just like the other shams in Hungary, they were supposed to meet there, and that stupid thing they did in Alaska. I just think that these people here in the Trump administration, he's listened to all these neocons, either in Washington or from Europe, and they're just feeding Trump a whole bunch of disinformation and lies, basically. It's a lot of it is just kind of the same as the Minsk frauds. You know, the Russians are, I don't see any way out of this 28 point program that Russia would probably accept anything. Most of it, they would just laugh at or say, you know, this is not even, or like you said, you know, leave the Ukrainian military at 60, 80,000. Well, the fact is right now, there's somewhere between 150,000 and 200,000 right sector and Azov Nazis or in the other groups, but Nazis in Ukraine. And what they're doing is the Nazis are not fighting on the front so much as just taking the people that are conscripted and sending them in and making sure they don't flee. Because the Russians were hunting these Nazis with extreme prejudice, and they were taking severe losses. But right now, this is the situation with the Nazis in Ukraine. Ukraine military is just pretty much, bewildered. It's just wanderlust, if you look at it that way, because they're just taking all these conscripts, the poor guys, and just putting them in this meat grinder. They have maybe 1 or 2 weeks training, and maybe Ukraine could be on the precipice of a civil war within itself. But as far as this 28 points, that there's so many you could go into that, the Russians were looking at the root causes of the SMO that had, and the situation prior to you know, putting the rockets into Poland and in Romania and stuff like that. There's nothing like that. Russia's looking for total, their interest. They're not going to just wander around and just sign some stupid document that has nothing to do. Russia has continuously outlined what it would take for a peace agreement, not a ceasefire. This thing here kind of looks almost like a ceasefire. It's a sham. I only see it as a fraud. They're just trying to get, and there was a thing in there where they're saying that, well, we'll take $200 billion and the United States will, and the Russians will rebuild Ukraine. Well, I don't think Russia sees it that way. Matter of fact, Russia sees it more like you guys started it, but your $4 billion from the United States State Department and $1 billion from the Rockefeller Corporation, $5 billion from Chevron to do fracking, and then did the coup there in 2014. And I think Russia's going to hold them responsible to pay for the Ukraine rebuilding.
Yeah, you made some good points. One of the things that I found really remarkable, within 1 week, Trump issued and demanded a peace plan for Gaza to end the fighting. And that already has flopped tremendously. But one of the characteristics of that peace plan, very similar to this peace plan for Ukraine and Russia, Trump was going to set up an international management group to manage what happens there with him at the top. He's going to head of that. And that's exactly what he proposed. It was in article number 27 of that 28 peace plan, that would be overseen by a peace council headed by Donald Trump. Now, for me, all these other 27 points you can throw out the window, because Russia was never going to admit to Donald Trump, who in 3 years is going to be out of office unless he does something to stay in office for as long as he's alive, but he's hardly coded anymore now anyway. And so this was the first thing when I read this whole thing was, you know what, blah, 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 27 points. This one, Russia was never going to admit to. Peter, there are some other points in this that are totally ludicrous. I know you've taken some notes on this, so I'm going to give you another crack at it to tear this thing apart.
Oh my God! Oh man, this is so much full of nonsense. Well, first, there are a couple other big ones that were just completely no goes. Is they said they would in point number 21 that the conflict will be frozen, and then they would acknowledge that that Russia has three: there's Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk, but it's completely leaving out Kherson and Zaporozhye, as if they're not understanding. These are part of Russia already. This is no free. There's going to be no frozen ceasefire, and these are already. They're not even acknowledging that these are a part of Russia. They voted again. They were not annexed. I keep hearing this. Oh, Russia annexed these territories. No, these people went to Russia and said, "Hey, we want to be a part of Russia." That's not annexation. This is a legal vote to become part of Russia. They voted, and they are now a part of Russia. So this nonsense that two of these territories are not currently part of Russia is just complete nonsense. Now, also, something that really hit me hard is this point number 26 that says parties involved in the conflict will receive full amnesty for actions committed during the war. Are you kidding me? Russia has done everything they can to abide by all rules of war, all rules of the Geneva Conventions. Ukraine has done none of this. Ukraine has treated Russian prisoners of war badly. The Ukraine government, in all their actions, they're literally terrorists, and they've also broken the Geneva Convention by attacking civilians intentionally. And we see this every day. I think we saw a video the other day of a drone, a guy with the white flag saying, "Hey, I'm a civilian," and they blew him up. Are you kidding me? So there are so many war crimes that Ukraine needs to be held accountable for. That in itself is completely. We're going to have Nuremberg trials number 2, for sure. For what the Ukrainian, they're not walking away scot-free with all these war crimes, with all these billions of dollars of stolen Western money that they've pilfered. Give me a break.
Yeah, you made a couple of really good points. There's no way that Russia is going to accept this amnesty for all of the war crimes that Ukraine has committed. People may not know it because it's not usually reported every day in the news, even here. Right here in Crimea, within 20 or 30 or 50 kilometers of where we live here in Yalta, they are getting bombarded daily. We have some friends that last week told us that where they live in Feodosia and Evpatoria, they can't sleep at night because of the sirens are going and the sound of drones. And there are no military bases whatsoever. They're attacking, as you mentioned, Peter, civilians, which they've been doing throughout Russia. And one could argue, hey, it's war. All right, so Ukraine, using their US, UK, France long-range missiles, attack Russian oil refineries. Okay. What's good for the goose is good for the gander in war. I can get that. But not when you target civilians multiple times a day, every day. And Peter, as you know, Russia has been documenting all of these crimes against humanity since the beginning of this war, and they've been presenting it to the United Nations. As these things are happening, you make a really good point. And, the other point that you made, Russia has always said that Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, Kherson, Zaporozhye are Russia, not because they voted according to the United Nations the right of self-determination. They've always been part of Russia. Yeah. And there's more of Ukraine that has been part of Russia, including the area of Odessa. I cannot believe that Russia will ever let Odessa fall into the hands of NATO and the United States Navy. I don't think that's going to happen. Russia has always said the reality on the ground. And with what's happening right now, Russia is playing nice, very diplomatic. Putin and Lavrov. Oh, the 28 plan. That's a good place to start to discuss what could happen. They didn't accept it. They said, okay, we can start talking about this. In the meantime, nothing is going to come of it. Just like, as you mentioned, Richard, nothing came of Alaska. The Budapest conference didn't happen. Russia knows nothing is going to come of this. Thursday's going to come around, and the United States says, Zelensky, if you don't agree to this, you're on your own. we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But Russia is saying, no, you know what? We're just going to keep plowing ahead. The front line is falling apart, is collapsing, and Ukraine really is about to collapse. I mean, every major important influencer from the United States, from Douglas McGregor to you name it, whoever you want, Scott Ritter, they're all saying that it's all over for Ukraine. So here we have this 28-point plan, and Russia is looking at this and they're going, it's not even a starter, but you know what? We're willing to talk. Richard, do you have any further thoughts on this? Because, I mean, there's so many things in this 28 points that just are non-starters. What thoughts do you have?
Well, one thing what Peter was talking about, as far as them talking about, leaving part of Kherson and Zaporozhye to Ukraine, even though they have been incorporated, they referended and came with the Russian Federation. That fits right into this New Jerusalem project that us conspiracy guys were talking about prior to and at the beginning of 2022 when this whole thing broke out as a conflict. And that's been going on since the early 2000s. It's Igor Burkhardt and the New Jerusalem project. This has all come from the Zionists. This is what they got planned. If you look at the boundaries now, where they are now, and the ones that they're saying, in Kherson and Zaporozhye, even though we'll take half of that. That's exactly where the boundaries are of the New Jerusalem project. No lie. You got to check it out, really. So again, us conspiracy guys kind of did some research and realized and reported it, but everybody laughed at it. But it's exactly what's happening. And now, don't they have a whole bunch of Zionists coming in from Israel and taking land either for free or for pennies on the dollar in those areas? That's happening right now as we speak. So this is a New Jerusalem project. Yes. On Scott,
Well,
it's there. I'll send some.
Richard,
anybody who wants, I can send the documents.
You're bringing up something that nobody's talking about, really. You call it the New Jerusalem Project or the Greater Israel Project. The Zionists have their sights already on parts of Ukraine. And this has been known for a long time.
This has been going since the early 2000s. Yes, since the early 2000s. So this is all planned,
We have some friends in Ukraine that have said in their city there are streets that are named with Israeli names, and there are communities of Israelis there. The same damn thing is happening in Greece, in Cyprus. These Israelis are fleeing Israel and going to other parts of the world where they've traditionally had a stakehold or a desire to occupy. I'm glad you mentioned that.
What you said. I'd like to note. I was over a week ago. I spent a week in Batumi, Georgia, and it's exactly what's happening over there. It's all Zionist Jews coming in there with suitcases loaded with cash and buying buildings up there. That place there, it's the first time I had been there. It's right on the Black Sea, almost like Yalta, but it's amazing. You see 60 and 50-story hotels, casinos everywhere, and it's all. I mean, when you go in the airport, I don't know. They have maybe 4 to 6 to and from Tel Aviv daily. And the Jews are just coming in all over there. It's Zionist Jews coming in there, buying up property and casinos. And when I was talking to Victor, he took me around, and it's mostly money laundering, too. It's a big money laundering hub down there. But amazing construction everywhere you see. And I'm not talking about 3 or 4. I don't know how many casinos. maybe 30 casinos in the whole in the place. So about the size of Yalta. It's just all casinos, but they're all huge, huge high-rise buildings. And well, Batumi's one too, where they're leaving. They can fly in and out of there. I don't know. It's less than a 2-hour flight, and a lot of Israeli airlines coming in there and other ones servicing them.
I had another show earlier in the week where one of my guests pointed out that Israeli money has really been behind everything that's going on in the world today. Now, that could be a topic for another discussion, but I want to continue on this 28-point peace plan. Richard, you mentioned Russia has been saying for a long time now, unless the root causes of this conflict are solved, Russia is not going to be happy. Now, I don't think we can emphasize enough what the root causes are. It goes back to the 1991 borders when the Soviet Union collapsed, that the Warsaw Pact collapsed. There was no more Soviet Union. And James Baker, the Secretary of State, and other representatives from France and Germany have documented that infamous promise that NATO would not advance 1 inch east towards what remained of the Soviet Union, and that being Russia. And since 1991 and Bill Clinton, NATO has absorbed 8 or 9 former Soviet republics all around Russia. Ukraine was to be the most recent, and that is Russia's doorstep. There was no way that Russia could allow that. And Russia has been demanding that their basic security has been destroyed because of that violation of that promise to not move 1 inch towards Russia. And now Russia's surrounded with American missiles in Poland, with American missiles in Moldova, with American missiles in Germany and UK, with tens of thousands of US and NATO troops. My God, most recently in Sweden and Norway, 2 previously neutral countries. I want you guys to comment on this now. How in the world can any objective person not see and understand the threat to Russia because of this NATO encirclement?
Yeah.
And we know that the United States would scream bloody murder if Russia or China had put a base in Mexico. And in fact, we're going to come to this in a minute. Russia and China have heavily assisted Venezuela in America's backyard with troops, with missile defense systems, with God knows what else. This is a very dangerous proposition. But I want to ask you now your thoughts on Russia's demand for its basic European, Eurasian security agreement. Peter, I come to you first.
Well, I've done some significant study on NATO, and I've come to the studied conclusion that NATO has never been what it has purported to be. It was formed in 1949, but everything I've seen about NATO makes no sense to me as far as calling it a defensive organization, that they were created to defend against the Warsaw Pact. Well, that on its surface is nonsense because the Warsaw Pact wasn't created until something like 7 years later. But if you look at the events right after World War II in 1946, Winston Churchill gave a speech in the United States and basically said, we're in a Cold War with Russia. So I believe he was actually the voice of the West saying, hey, Russia just helped us win, or Russia just won World War II, which both UK and US don't really acknowledge. And now we're declaring they're the enemy. That's what he did in 1946. He declared Russia an enemy. And Russia had done nothing to deserve this designation as enemy. Now, I think NATO's core mission, its hidden core mission since the very beginning, was to break up and control Russia. So, to your point, in 1991, when the Russian threat ceased to exist, NATO should have ceased to exist. Not just not move 1 inch east. It should have said, okay, we no longer have a mandate. They didn't do that. Now they waited, I don't know, 6 or 7 years before they started to expand. But I think their intent has always been to break up and control Russia. So that expansion, I don't know. I think I did a thing on it. I went and researched it. They've expanded like, I don't know, 10 or 13, 14 times. Not just once, but a number closer and closer and closer to Russia, and finally to Ukraine. And if you look at what Ukraine is today, essentially it's a de facto NATO state. I mean, the West has had more military exercises in NATO than any other country in NATO. And they're not even, quote unquote, a NATO state yet, but come on. They're a NATO state in all but the official, papers. So, and everyone knows that there's NATO troops running all around Ukraine right now, helping Ukraine.
Yeah. For me, again, it's hard for me to understand that anybody who's trying to see things objectively and critically, it's hard to deny what is happening by NATO, the EU. My God, for the last couple 100 years, going back to the Swedes, going back to Napoleon, going back to the Crimean War, going back to World War I, World War II, and Hitler. The goal, Peter, as you're clearly articulating, has been to break up Russia into small pieces and to steal its resources. And is this not the entire goal and mission of imperialism? Going back to the British, the Dutch, the French, wherever they went, to Asia, to Africa, to the Americas, it was to steal land and resources and labor. And you can see the same thing is happening now with this proxy conflict in Ukraine. The whole purpose, decapitate the leadership, Putin, a strategic defeat of Russia, to break it up and to steal its vast resources. This is really what it comes down to. Now, I want to finish on this topic of the peace plan. I find it hilarious, and I mean hilarious. Richard, I'm going to start with you, that everybody in the EU, including Macron, including Merz, even including von der Leyen and Kaja Kallas, have their underwear in a knot because they were not included in this peace plan. They heard about it the same time everybody else did. and they're running around not knowing what to do. Emergency telephone calls, emergency meeting in Kiev. Richard, what's your take on the reaction of the Europeans or not being included in this peace plan?
Well, I guess they got egg on their face, because they're not being included, but they're just incompetent order takers. And I guess that's the way Trump looks at them, is just incompetent order takers. And, we'll step on them, or they're just losers. Like he called Representative Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene the other day, called them losers because they brought up things that he was just denying. But Trump is Trump. He thinks he can just come over there and make out some sort of plan here for Russia winning this war, and under their circumstances, under their demands. And he's delusional, just absolutely delusional. But they're all taking orders. All these people you talked about in the UN and Trump, they're all taking orders from the same evil ones we've talked about over and over. These bloodline families, RH negative, satanic bloodline banking families. These are the ones calling the shots. These are the ones who tell them what to do. Order takers in the EU, and Trump too. He's not a businessman and on his own. No. He's owned by them. He shows up. Just all you have to do is look at his actions in Gaza, like we were talking about, and his flippant attitude and arrogant. He's just a satanic, arrogant fool. And if he thinks he's going to push Russia around, I don't think Russia's going to put up with it. They see right through this satanic mask he wears, this evil mask. The only thing I could call them, they're monsters, man. They're evil monsters. They've ruined the economies of Europe. They've ruined the economies of the United States. And now they just want to come in, like you said, the RAND documents, I think it was 2019, to take Russia and break it apart in 7 different pieces and regime change. And this is what they're doing, one way or another. China knows that. That's why China's heavily getting on board with Russia, because they know if they do that to Russia, China's next. No 2 ways about it. Yeah.
Good points. Peter, what are your thoughts on the
monsters.
European?
People are monsters.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Peter, on Europe's reaction to Trump's peace plan?
Oh, well, I think their reaction basically is meaningless, in the sense that they have no say in the matter, and their input doesn't mean anything. The thing that does concern me is the warmongers in the deep state in the US, the UK, and EU. They want and need war, because Rich's point, they've destroyed the economies in Europe and UK and US, and most people in the US still don't want to acknowledge how bad the economy is. But they're soon going to see how bad it is, because there's some stuff coming that it's going to be impossible to ignore. Now, it's my hope, like I said in the very beginning, that possibly Trump's plan, by presenting this 28-point plan of nonsense, is that he knew Ukraine wouldn't accept it, and it would give him an excuse to say, okay, I gave them an out and they didn't take it, so I'm out. And I think you said Trump has given them a time frame, like sometime this week, to say, you guys in Ukraine need to decide, because if you don't give me an answer pretty quickly, then I'm out. Like, if they say, hey, we're not going to agree to it. Now, Ukraine initially said they weren't going to agree to it, but I don't know. I think they might understand that if they don't agree to it, that all aid will stop. And then if all aid stops, then the war will stop fairly quickly within, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks or sooner. And I think that's hopefully Ukraine still rejects it and they don't understand what's going on. And Trump says, okay, I'm out, which he should have done January 20th, but better late than never. He's allowed 500,000 more people to die in Ukraine, both Russian and Ukrainians in the interim. But this would be good because then it would then if he just pulls all aid away from Ukraine, then Ukraine is done, and it will be an unconditional surrender, meaning, okay, we're at your mercy, Russia, and thankfully Russian leadership is Christian, so I think they'll do all the right things to try to. But I agree with you. I think Russia's going to take Odessa for sure. And once they do, they'll say to the people in Odessa, hey, you need to, do you want to be a part of Russia? And we know people in Odessa say yes. And then they'll have no connection to the Black Sea. And they're basically, the term is a rump state. But the old Ukraine is gone. It's never coming back. And anyone who thinks the old Ukraine will come back, it's just complete nonsense. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. You know, I honestly hope that there's no peace deal by Thursday, whether it's because Ukraine says, no, we're not going to give up our sovereignty. No, we're not going to give up territory. No, we don't trust you, Trump. Whatever it is, if Trump and the United States deep state really did stop any aid, directly or indirectly, as they're doing now through the EU, oh, we'll send you our weapons, top dollar. You then will pay for those and you can send them to Ukraine. We're not going to send them directly. If Trump cuts it all off, including satellite intelligence, then this thing is over in a hurry. Yeah. I could only hope and pray that might happen. We got to wait 4 more days to find out what's going to happen on Thursday. But I sense that Trump is going to squirm, Zelensky is going to squirm, Ukraine's going to squirm, and Russia's just going to keep doing what it's doing.
It has to.
Yeah, I agree. They have to.
They have no choice. It is. I heard Stas Krapivnik on another video, and I really trust his analysis. And he was saying there's between 150 and 200,000 Nazis, and the Russians have to go, and they got to hunt them, whether they have a peace deal or not. They cannot let those people just be there in a rump state and allow them to flourish. No way. No way. That won't go. Yeah. Russia's lost too many men. They got to send Spetsnaz troops in there and hunt them in Ukraine and drive them out of Ukraine or kill them. And that's what they were wanting to do. You know, I don't think the Russians want to kill these conscripts.
Listen, I can't repeat it enough. Russia's second goal for the special military operation is the complete denazification of Ukraine.
Yes.
That means, Richard, it not only means what you're saying, they got to hunt them all down and kill them or drive them out. And it means, Richard, it means 2 more things. The Constitution has to be rewritten. The entire Rada, their parliament, needs to be cleaned out. There can be no remnants of this Bandera Nazi ideology left. And
Richard, got to go.
Richard, to change the mentality, which has been building to a crescendo for 80 years, this Bandera ideology in Western Ukraine primarily, is going to take an educational process, a re-educational process for Western Ukraine and wherever else that Nazi ideology has embedded itself. And so you're absolutely right. Russia has no choice but to clean it
No.
out. All right.
Hey,
I mean,
Can we
I want to mention one thing on the 28 plan. I found number 16 hilarious. It was Russia will legislatively enshrine a policy of non-aggression toward Europe and Ukraine.
yeah,
U.S. has been the aggressor the whole time. It's not Russia.
yeah,
Russia
yeah.
say, "Oh yeah, we can change this to the U.S. legislation needs to say that they're not going to have aggression toward Russia or China."
Yeah, and Peter, what's absolutely insane, the previous two countries, most recent additions to NATO, Sweden and Finland,
Finland.
have
Yeah.
traditionally been neutral. These two countries, their leadership, I don't believe it's the people. I know there's great resistance, but Sweden and Finland and the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, are absolutely freaking gone crazy, believing and thinking that Russia wants to invade them. We know we're living here. Russia's got enough of its own problems. It's going to have enough of its own problems just in the rebuilding and reconstruction of Ukraine. My God, thinking that Russia wants to advance as an imperial conqueror is so stupid. It's unbelievable. Listen, with the time we have left, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that nobody's paying attention to. What's really going on behind the scenes. It's been said, and I've said it many times, we've talked about it. All of the stuff we're talking about is a distraction. The genocide, very real, horrendous, is a distraction. Venezuela now is a huge distraction. The United States pivoting to China and Taiwan is another distraction. This war and this peace plan in Ukraine is another distraction. And what are they hiding? I think they're hiding the plan of the global elite, and I hate calling them elite, the global financial mafia, gangster cabal, as clearly expressed by Klaus Schwab, his World Economic Forum, is to depopulate the planet Earth. We have some 8 billion people now. They want to reduce the population to their golden billion because of technocracy, because of AI, because of robotics. They have no need for the rest of us who are useless non-producers. They want to eliminate us. They want a one world government. They want to control everything. This has been a plan that's over 100 years old and only now is coming to fruition. And Klaus Schwab, the Bilderberg group that meets every year in Davos, Switzerland, they're all part of the same global, powerful financial people, corporate people. They want to do away with the rest of us. I think this is not the greatest threat to who we are as humans, because there's another one that we'll finish the show with. But what are your thoughts about the threat of this depopulation, one world government, where all of us who remain will be happy, will have nothing, and will eat bugs? Peter.
Well, when I first started hearing this, I thought it was conspiracy theory, but now I'm convinced it's conspiracy fact. It's conspiracy fact for sure. Now, I'm hopeful because I'm convinced the Russia, China, and the BRICS are not down with this Western, evil plan to control the whole world. No, that's why one of the reasons they want to take Russia. They want to take Russia first And once they break up Russia, they want to use Russia resources to take China. Well, it's a nice theory, but they've already lost the economic battle. They started losing that economic battle starting about 5 years ago with the G7 and the BRICS. So that their agenda, I think they're seeing it die in front of their eyes, which makes, I think, where we are extremely dangerous, because I think these people are so crazy that they'll say, well, if we can't control the whole world, then we'll just destroy the whole world. And I've heard some people say, well, I don't think they're suicidal. I think they're suicidal. I think they're first homicidal, to your point. I think they do want to erase, I don't know, what is it, 7 billion people or more off the face of the earth? Because they think the earth belongs to them. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. There's 8 billion people of us that it belongs to all of us, not just you golden billion or whatever number you nut jobs come up with. So I think the BRICS countries are standing in their way and will have already made it where their plans can't come to fruition, which that's why I say I think right now it's the most dangerous period in history, because I think these people are crazy enough to, once they figure out they can't win, and I think they're quickly coming to that conclusion, is that they're just going to say, okay, we're going to take out the whole world. They're going to take it nuclear. Now, I think this is one of the reasons that President Putin and the Russian government has moved so slowly in Ukraine. It's like, okay, they know they're dealing with crazy people in the West. It's like, okay, we need to step very gingerly and work very slowly along with the other, winning the war, but not escalate things to a point which triggered the crazies in the West to figure out, oh, we can't win, let's just go nuclear. Now, Russian government, the leaders understand the consequences of a nuclear war. And that's why President Putin has been so hesitant to escalate things. And I'm very grateful. The world should be grateful to him, because I think the only reason the world isn't a smoking, nuclear holocaust right now is President Putin said, yeah, we're not going to do that unless unless we're completely pushed to the wall and we have to.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you. Richard, what are your thoughts?
Well, you're right. It's going on in a plan itself from Albert Pike in the late 1890s, but 1992 H.W. Bush with that famous, I think it was in Rio de Janeiro, a New World Order. And this has been going on. Yeah, sure. This is it. This is these plan, and they pushed Russia and China, especially back there, the United Nations, and a one-child policy back in the 80s and everything. That really demographically hurt Russia. It really demographically hurt China. China's reeling now from that. So they've done these chemtrail operations from the 1990s starting. These are all, nanotechnology being sprayed in the air to supposedly for their climate change. They did COVID. With COVID, this is how many millions have died from it, and still are dying from it. So, there's ramifications of COVID. I saw that when I was back in Connecticut this summer. I talked with people talking, and we were talking about some of the things that, changed and everything, and I was bringing up concepts about COVID, how COVID changed stuff. Economically, it changed stuff, What they tried to pull on the COVID thing, gladly it blew up in their faces. But boy, if that wasn't, trying to bring down the populations of the world, what else is it, Injecting you with an RNA, whatever, loaded with all sorts of junk, nothing to do with a flu, to change you, your DNA and whatever. I think that's attack right on humanity. So what people should do is wake up like they did. Now, there's not much going on in the news, But if you remember, what was it, 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, the whole country of Italy shut down for a week. And I think it sent them reeling. And the people in France and the people in Germany and England, they're getting really pretty disgusted with this whole stuff. If they're going to say that they're going to have to fight Russia over this, I think that we could maybe see a worldwide revolution and stand up to the real cancer, the real enemy, which is these bloodline families that we've talked about with this massive wealth. No, all they are old men in suits who need to be reloaded. That's what's got to go. The United States and Canada, you could RICO that Rockefeller family for all the crimes against humanity and take their hundreds of trillions of dollars and redistribute it among the people and start printing your own money. You don't need these people. You don't need them. They're cancer. They've been a cancer. And they got a stranglehold on the people. And the same thing in Europe. They've ruined the Western cultures. And these are all, satanic Zionists and other satanic filth. They're just anti-human. There ain't no two ways about it. There ain't no two. They're monsters, man.
Yeah, Richard, you made a really good point. The people in the countries you mentioned across the EU are suffering so badly economically. Companies have shut down. They've lost millions of jobs. Inflation is going out of sight. They can't afford heat. We're coming into winter across the EU and from the UK all the way over. The people are suffering. The people in the United States are suffering. We've been talking about that recently. How inflation is going up, how the government has been lying about the economy and jobs. People across the world are beginning to rise up peacefully, not violently, although there's been violence, but it's the same MO. People like George Soros and others are funding these outsiders to come in and create this violence. But people around the world, I believe, are beginning to wake up. I want to finish on this note very quickly. Peter, you mentioned it. I've said this many times since 2016 when I made my second film, 30 Seconds to Midnight, Doomsday. I said at the end, will the neocons in Washington or their global elite masters, recognizing they've lost this epic battle for the control of the world, take the whole world down with them in a nuclear Armageddon? I want your final thoughts on this. This, I believe, is the elephant in the room, the thing nobody wants to talk about. We are that close to the unthinkable, the unspeakable. Richard, briefly, with the time we have yet left, your thoughts on the possibility of a nuclear Armageddon.
Well, just like you said from your documentary, which was a masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. And yeah, and aren't we right there right now? I mean, you're right there right now. And it's just amazing. It's just it's so biblical. It's amazing. It's biblical. This is the light against the darkness, and these people are dark. They don't care. They're dark. So yeah, we're there. We're right at the 1 minute to 12. So but one other thing I'd just like to say too, though. Just recently, there was local elections in Germany, and they have this. Was it the AID? They say it's right wing, but we're really getting behind that. And you notice the ones that were running there, the satanic leftists or whatever they are in Germany, murdered them. There was like 3 or 4 murdered. The candidates were murdered. So if you want to stand up in Germany, you will be murdered. So we're telling the German people they're going to have to grab some clubs and go get them. That's the only thing I can see. Say, oh well, we're not going to go for bloodshed. Well, I don't know what else. It's getting to a point that we're going to have to make a stand one way or another, either monetarily, physically, or just say no.
Yeah. Peter, your final thoughts.
Well, I think I've said this before on one of our shows. I think right now is the most dangerous period in world history, because during the Cuban Missile Crisis, at least we had, reasonable leaders on both sides of the equation. Right now, the only reasonable leaders I see are in the East, with Russia and China and the BRICS. The European leaders have just gone. They're talking about going to war with Russia every day. And I'm convinced it's because they've so destroyed the economies in those countries that they've got to have war to cover it up. But they just don't understand this time it's different. It's not. This isn't like these wars in the past where they were able to start them and cover up the economic damage they did. We have nukes and have had nukes since 1945. Now, which is the only country that's ever used them in war, and it wasn't even necessary? It was us, in Japan. Those bombs weren't necessary. Japan had already said they were going to surrender. They had, messaged, basically said, "Hey, we're about there." Those nukes dropped in Japan was a message to scare the world, specifically Russia, to say, "Hey, we're crazy enough to use these." So we've shown we're crazy enough to do it against innocent civilian populations. And I just pray that we can get through this time, without going nuclear and get these crazies out of power. But I do know they are insane. I mean, and I don't use that word lightly. These people they've lost it. And so I hope we can get them out of power before they do something stupid, but it's not, at this point, it's not looking promising, because they're crazy, but they're not stupid. I mean, not stupid in the sense that they can logically avoid being held accountable, or they think they can, or they just say, "Hey, if the world goes down, I'm gonna take the world down with me," that's just completely. But I think they're crazy enough to have a plan to be able to do that. It's like, this is our plan to destroy the world.
Yeah, and Richard would call that evil, and so would I. I want to end on this note. Einstein is famous for this quote. He said, "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything save our modes of thinking, and we thus drift toward unparalleled catastrophe." And I would add the unthinkable. Guys, it's been another very interesting show. For all of you who are watching us and following us, we are the three Amigos. We're three Americans who've taken up residence not just in the Russian Federation, but in Yalta. Our mission is not just to have political discussion, but as we go forward, and weather permits, our mission is to try to show you Crimea and Russia that we've discovered through our own eyes and our years of life here, to try to show Americans, people in the West, the truth as we have discovered it from our time here in Russia.